Okay, hi guys. I wanted to sit down today and talk to you a little bit about something that I have talked about before. I think a few years ago I did make a video about being introverted, and I explained to you in that video how I learned, that I was introverted and what it changed in my life and all of those things. But it was quite a while ago actually. I think maybe even 3 or 4 years ago, probably. 3 probably. And recently I made a French video about being introvert and also being a teacher, and I thought, you know what, this could be interesting also for my English viewers, even though I have made a video about that before, but not about the teaching part. And okay, just before I get into the subject, I want to say this is also why you may have noticed, I'm sure you have, that I don't post as often in English. It's because I have already talked about most of the things I talk about in French. So I don't know how to deal with that, because I feel like, I have done videos very similar in the past in English, and I haven't done them in French because for the longest time I was not doing any French videos, So now I have all of these topics that I can talk about in French, and I have already talked about them in English. So I don't feel like redoing those videos. But at the same time, those videos are, for some of them, a little bit old, and maybe my views have slightly changed, or maybe some of you are new, or maybe some of you did not see those videos. So let me know if you think this would be worth doing those videos again, if I feel like some parts of my thought process or my opinions have changed, and let me know. If you think it's worth doing them again, I will do those videos, even if I have made similar videos in the past in English. But yeah, I also, just really want to say that, most of my French videos that I do now are about things that I have talked about in English previously, because I've been doing videos for over 10 years. So I have covered a lot of subjects. So just to clarify a few things, I am an introvert, but I don't define myself as an introvert in the sense that I don't feel like this is all that I am. I don't feel like this defines me completely and limits me and restricts me to certain attitudes and behaviors and things that I can do or things that I can like. It's not even like something that's on my mind on a daily basis, of course. I am not a big fan of labels in general, unless you use them for your own good. And I think labels can be amazing in the sense that they can, change the way you perceive yourself. Like, let's say, for example, as an introvert, maybe in the first place you think you're shy and lazy and fragile and weak and unmotivated and not something fun to be around, and then you learn what introversion is, and you learn that a lot of people have this trait of character and personality, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. Then you look at what you do and what you don't do in a totally different light, and maybe it enables you to connect with other people and share experiences and read and hear testimonies. And I think this is how labels are very important. I just want to say, I am not a big fan of labels in that way when it comes to very personal things, but when it comes to more political things, I think they're absolutely crucial in order to, just connect and create theory and create discourses and texts and laws and be present in the political sphere and world. So yeah, but that could be another thing. Let me know if you're interested in a video about labels. Even though I may have done this before, I don't remember. Okay, so I am an introvert, and I discovered that I was an introvert really late in my life. I think maybe when I was about 20 or 19. And the reason why I did not really think of myself as an introvert before was because I've always been someone very what would be the word? I've always had strong ideas, and I've never been afraid to talk about what I think and to speak up and to speak my mind, basically. So even as a child, I would, answer sometimes in a way that was probably not the best, and I would talk back to teachers when, I felt like something was not right. I would always ask. Like, whenever someone would tell me, whether it was my family or an adult or a figure of authority, to do something, I would always ask why. And yeah, I was just, that kid that really is not afraid, I suppose. And I grew up to be the same teenager who really didn't like authority and who really expressed their ideas all the time, whether it would be about animalism and anti-speciesism and feminism or anything like this, really. So no one really thought of me as being an introvert, because most people think, oh, if you're super confident in your ideas and you know what you believe in, and if you are not afraid to speak up in a classroom or in a debate, you can't really be an introvert, right? Also, in my family and in my own circle, I've always had the very same circle of friends, so of course I knew them since like primary school, and it becomes, at that point, it becomes like your family. So even if you're in a group, you don't feel, as an introvert, you don't feel the same as you would in a group of people you don't know as much. And in my family, because my mom and my sister are more like cold and reserved and a bit like, we have very different personalities, let's put it that way. And I am someone who's very warm. I love to exchange with people. I love to talk. I love to express my emotions and share my emotions with people. And I cannot be someone who's moody. And you know, whenever I have something to say, I say it. If there's something wrong or an argument that needs to be done or have had, I do it and then move on. But my sister and my mom, my dad, a bit more like me, are not like this. So I had to compensate, I feel, like with warmth and dialogue and just expressing myself, because I felt rather uncomfortable with those two personalities that were extremely different, even though they were really loving, really fun, and I love hanging out with my mom and my sister. But sometimes it can be a bit draining for me to feel just the silence and the just how they are. It really is difficult for me sometimes, and so I overcompensated. Basically, I became even more talkative. I became even more in dialoguing and expressing and exchanging with people. So because of all of that, no one around me believed that I was an introvert, and therefore I did not even really question it myself, even though there had been signs, even though I was spending a lot of time alone reading, even though I was never up or never really keen on the idea of like parties and going to sleepovers and group projects in school, or entering like crowded places or the shops or anything like that. And even in school, you know, whenever there were really instances where I felt super uncomfortable doing something, and I gathered the strength and the courage to go to the teacher and explain to them that I felt really uncomfortable doing that because of my introversion and also because of my anxiety, but that's something I'm going to talk about a little bit later, I was always met with like denial, like, you're not shy, are you? So, and you have good grades, you have like really good marks and results, so why would you react that way and whatnot? And I think this is because people don't understand what introversion is. They think it is being stressed or being shy, which is not the case. Being introverted means that you, even though you may enjoy social interactions, you really need your own time to recharge your battery. Like, being with people is exhausting to me, like physically exhausting. If I see someone for 4 or 5 hours in a day, that's a lot for me. And then the next day I'm not going out, I'm not seeing anyone, and I'm probably having a nap, just because my body is exhausted. I also like activities that are a bit more solitary and calm and quiet. That's very, 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 very important for me. I don't feel good in environments that are very like with a lot of noise, a lot of people, a lot of things going on, a lot of agitation. Even if they are positive, it makes me feel really like lost and a bit like, wow, I need to get out of here, basically. Whereas extroverts will thrive in those environments because they will feel the energy, it will full and fill them up, and basically they're gonna work really fine in those environments. It's gonna be really motivating and stimulating for them, whereas for me it's gonna be just like, wow, a big no-no. I don't like crowded places. I don't like having to interact with people that I don't know if it is in a specific environment. I feel really bad like talking on the phone or doing all those things that are very typical of introverts. But basically introversion is the real need to have your own space, your own time for your physical and mental health, because exchanging with people is exhausting to you, and a lot of stimulation, sensorial stimulation, be it light, noises, smells, whatever it could be, you feel them a lot more. And that's tied up with hypersensitivity, which is hypersensitivity, which is something that I also have. I am really sensitive to noise and lights and sounds and smells and also feelings. I am an empath in a way, not like those weird videos that you see people claiming that they feel the energy or they can cure you or whatever. No, I feel like I'm just very empathic as a person. I feel other people's emotions really strongly. I can sense in their face what they feel, and if someone's sad, I'm sad as well, and if someone's ashamed or uncomfortable, I feel ashamed and uncomfortable as well. So all of those things are exhausting, basically. And so I discovered really late that I was an introvert when basically I moved out, when I went to university, and basically when all those people that I had known for so long stopped being so important in my, like, so present in my life, and I mean, those people had like preconceived ideas about me and who I am, really. And I don't mean that in a mean way at all. So when I went to uni and went in a new city, I was in Paris, met a lot of new people and was in a new environment. Really quickly I realized, oh my gosh, wow, this is very different. Like, I don't feel good in that place, in that environment, in that situation, that kind of situation, and blah blah blah. And that's when I realized, gosh, I am an introvert for sure, like for sure. And when I first realized that, I was like a bit conflicted. How can it be possible when I've been told all my life that I was not, and that I was the opposite of that? And if you had told any of my friends at the time, or my teachers, or even my dad and mom, that I was an introvert, they would have been like, no, that's not true. They would have laughed at you probably. But being in a new environment with people who met me as I was and who had not seen me in a familiar environment since I was like a small child, it became really obvious. And it kind of was a relief in a way, because I was like, okay, this is just a trait of personality, of character. It's nothing to be ashamed of, and I don't have to feel bad anymore in a way for not wanting to hang out, for never wanting to go to bars and parties, and for rather staying at home or in a park by myself with a book. But I think what was really difficult for me was the fact that when I first realized that I was an introvert, that's also the time where my anxiety disorders were really high, and when I was diagnosed with social anxiety disorder and a generalized anxiety disorder as well. So it was really hard for me to know what was the result or the consequence or like the symptoms of my social anxiety disorder or my generalized anxiety disorder, or what was, directly linked to being an introvert, because sometimes they overlaps in a way. Even though you don't necessarily are an anxious person, and you definitely do not have anxiety disorders necessarily if you are an introvert, but sometimes it's hard to know what is what, and therefore how to adapt and how to respond to it. So it was a bit of a difficult time for me. And now I am a teacher. I've been a teacher now for about 4 years, and I've taught in like different situations to different kinds of students, adults, teenagers, migrants, and now regular kids, French kids who go to school. I've been getting a few questions over the past years, like, how do you manage to teach with anxiety, or how do you teach as an introvert? And to be honest, before, it never really was an issue. I think it never really was an issue because I felt really safe and really comfortable with the people that I was teaching to, like the students that I had, especially when I was teaching to young migrants, like underage migrants who came to France on their own. The connection that I had with them was such a connection of trust and love. Honestly, it was affection and love and care. Like I cared so much for them, that it never felt like a chore. It never felt like a pain to be around them, because it, as I told you, when there is this love connection, I feel like people don't exhaust you as much, and especially when you feel like what you're doing is extremely meaningful, it becomes for anybody really, it becomes a lot easier to go beyond your limits and to find the energy to do so. But now, as a teacher in middle school and high school with French kids that, you know, don't really value being at school, we don't really value and realize their own privileges, and we can be sometimes really annoying. It has become more difficult because I have strict hours, because I have a lot of transport time to get there, because they are really loud, and because they chat all the time, because they don't necessarily, because the trust is not there, because the relationship is not the same. And because of all of that, being an introvert, it is difficult. It gets really difficult to be in a classroom and have to deal with one-on-one situations and interactions, but also one to all the classroom and people in the classroom, you know, exchanging with one another. When you have to care for all of those interactions and add on that the fact that there is no trust, there is no real emotional connection in that situation, and that you are tired because you live in a big city and you have to take the bus or the metro, whatever, for more than 1 hour and all of those things, it becomes really difficult as an introvert, really difficult. And lately I have been having troubles dealing with my introversion, but also my anxiety. And as I said, right now, as in the past, it's difficult for me to clearly say what's about my introversion and what's about my anxiety disorders. But yeah, I feel exhausted all of the time. I don't feel like going out, I don't feel like seeing people, and I barely do anything that's not about work or YouTube. And even YouTube is becoming a bit more difficult, because the reality is that teaching is exhausting in nature, I believe. It's exhausting to be in front of that many people all of the time. It's exhausting because whatever job that you have, usually, you know, you can be on auto mode, is what I like to call it. When you're a teacher, you can't. You have to be available. You have to be in the moment all of the time. You can't just be sitting at work and have one of those moments where your mind goes and wander a little bit, or when you reply very automatically to emails, or you do this, whatever, like even if you're, whatever job it is that you have, I believe that frequently you can be on auto mode. But when you are interacting with people in a way that you have to not only care for them, like, I don't know, like move them around or whatever, you have to be available. Your mind has to be there all of the time, and that's exhausting for anybody, but I think it is even more exhausting for introverts. And then you have meetings with your colleagues, you have meeting with your direct, like your hierarchy, and you have meeting with parents, right? And even when you're back home, when you really want to just, you know, relax, you have tests to mark and grade, and you have paperwork to do, and you have, you know, comments to make about the children and the kids and the students online or on their, what's that called, the papers that they bring home after a semester or whatever. Basically, you are never done, and it feels like it's invading your privacy, or invading your home and invading your own time, which is not a nice feeling for anybody, I believe. But as an introvert, as I said previously, you really need those in order to feel good and to be just healthy. I have to be honest with you, I've had terrible sleeping pattern for a long time, but I feel like now I oversleep. Basically, I take naps, which I never did before, really. I do take naps now on a, like, anytime that I can take a nap. I don't intend on doing so, but I am definitely gonna sleep at some point. I feel exhausted when I come back home. I have migraines so frequently. I did get the flu this winter, which had not happened to me before. I don't think I ever got the flu before, because I'm not someone who gets sick. I'm stressed all the time, and my digestion is not so great. And I know it is all because of work and how it kind of doesn't match with who I am as an introvert and someone who also has anxiety disorders. So you might think at that point, so okay, do you hate your job and do you want to change your job? The answer is no, I think, but honestly, the answer is no, because I have taught in the past, and because I know what it can be like, and because I also have some high schoolers, and it's going a lot better with the high schoolers. But if it hadn't been the case, like, would it be my first year teaching if I didn't know what it's like, you know, to teach with different like students and different situations and different environments? I would probably feel extremely what would be the word, like confused and a bit at a loss for direction for the rest of my life. Because honestly, and that's also something I want to address, and I don't know how it is in your country, but teaching in France is getting more and more difficult because you are not paid enough for the job that you do, for the qualifications that you have. You are not in power, and you don't really have agency over where you work, how you work, and what you do. You are constantly criticized, and you always need to justify yourself if you know, grade a paper with, you know, a grade that's not good enough to the teacher, to the students and their family. I don't know, for like the choices that you make in terms of pedagogy and subjects and whatnot. The first year that you teach in French after the competitive exams, you are treated like a student. You're half of your time you do work as a teacher, and half of your time you go to, like, I don't know what it would be like called. You're being taught how to teach, but you're not really being taught anything really. But you have oral presentations, and you need to be observed, and someone comes to your class a few times a year to just see how it goes, and they never have anything positive to say. You are told that you need to be this and that and do this and that, which are most of the time absolutely unrealistic for what you can do in 1 hour with that kind of students. I have a paper, like 20 pages to write, that I need to hand over. I also have to go and see other teachers teach in other schools than mine, so it's just like a lot of time, a lot of pressure, a lot of justification all of the time about everything that you do. And we also live in an era where a lot of students feel like they can criticize you and can question you, like, why did you give us this exercise, why did you do this like this, and blah 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 blah. And as an introvert, all of that becomes even more difficult. And so when I stop teaching, like when my work's done basically, and when I come back home, there is the more than 1 hour bus ride. But then even when I'm at home, I am just exhausted. I don't want to interact with anybody anymore. I don't want to go out anymore because I am just tired. I am exhausted. I am exhausted. And I think this is a very vicious circle, because obviously who would feel happy that way? You know, the only thing that makes me feel like this can maybe get better is that I know that next year probably I won't be under observation or supervision anymore. I won't have to do all those things and go to this formation center or whatever. I know that I will probably feel more comfortable in the sense that, you know, I will have just one thing to focus on, and then YouTube, and that's gonna be a lot easier. And I'm hoping to have more classes in high school and not in fucking middle school. But I also honestly, and that's just my first year of teaching, right? I don't see myself doing that for all my life. At least the way that I am doing it now, with the age groups that I have, no way I am seeing myself living the life that I do live now. Because, you know, maybe if I were an extrovert, I would be fine, in the sense that yes, it's sometimes annoying, yes, it is exhausting, yes, society does not value your work enough as a teacher, but I would still be able to have a life, because I wouldn't be so exhausted, I wouldn't be so just drained from any energy. So I would be able to hang out with friends and go out and go to museums and just do whatever I want. But as an introvert, I can't. And I don't want my life to be this only. I want to feel motivated to make online content for you guys. I want to feel motivated to go out and explore Paris, the city that I really like. I want to feel motivated to meet people. I want to feel motivated to go to new places. I want to feel motivated to go to exhibits and art shows and whatever it is. You know, I want to live. And I don't think it's too much to ask, but yeah. So for anyone who's curious about how I deal with being an introvert and teaching, honestly, even though this video might sound a bit negative, I want to say it is possible. It is really possible. You know what? I have known probably the most fulfilling and the happiest time of my life when I was teaching to underage migrants. And I was teaching, I was still an introvert, I was in the classroom, and it was exhausting, it was a lot of work. But because I felt like it was meaningful, because I had a connection with them, because it was so aligned with my values, being an introvert, I think, was even perhaps a strength, in the sense that I could, you know, understand more all sorts of students, their personalities, their different characteristics, and maybe it made me a better teacher in a way. Especially because they had, you know, some of them had really traumatic pasts, so you had to be really caring and careful and not rush them or treat them all the same and pretend that they don't have specific experiences and life experiences, and sometimes very hard and very, very painful ones. So if you're an introvert and if you want to teach, go for it. It can be a wonderful experience. Of course, it's going to need a few adjustments, and of course you're going to need a few tools to make it work for you, because society is clearly made for extroverts and not for introverts. But I have to say that honestly right now, I don't deal with introversion and teaching very well, because there is nothing that I can really find myself aligned with. I don't know if that's very clear, but I can't, you know, what I like in teaching is the meaning that I find in it, the reasons why I'm doing it. And when you can't really find those reasons, as an introvert, teaching becomes so difficult because of all of the things that I mentioned in the video. So yes, it's difficult, and I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you and say it's wonderful. No, it is difficult. It really is difficult, and for me this year has been extremely challenging. And I've had moments where, you know, I really wanted to give up, and I've had moments where I was like, okay, I'm going to do this for 5 years and that's it, I'm gonna stop after that. I have had moments where I couldn't see really any hope for the future in terms of like liking this job. But I also have moments where, you know, sometimes for example, this year I did study a text of Audre Lorde with my 2 classes that are about 13 and 14 years old. It was a great class. They loved it. In that moment, I felt like I was doing something good. When you talk with them about, you know, gender in language, that they're interested and they ask questions, you also feel like what you're doing is important. When you study Frankenstein with them and they love a text that's a classic, you know, that could be difficult in a way, and they love it, and they tell you, oh, that's actually relevant today. That's amazing. That's amazing. You have moments that are amazing and that are meaningful, and I'm trying to focus on those moments. But honestly, and that's because of the teaching system in France, I believe, those moments are unfortunately a minority, and they're sometimes lost in the vast majority of moments where you are just here to say, please be quiet, please be quiet, please be quiet. And as someone who has never wanted in my whole life to be that person to say, please be quiet, it's difficult. So yeah, it has to do with introversion, but it also has to do with how you teach and how your country treats teachers and education, really. So that's my answer. I hope this was an interesting video. I think it was a long ramble, but I hope that it somehow interested you. I hope that it somehow echoed in you if you're an introvert or if you're in the education world. I would absolutely love to hear your feedback, guys, and to hear what you have to say about that, because I'm sure it could be really interesting. So yeah, I really appreciated sitting down and talking to you in English, guys. Let me know what you would like to see for my next video, because I don't really have any idea, I think, for now. So yeah, I really hope this was not a video that's depressing or negative or off-putting of the teaching jobs. It's just that I think we have to be honest about it, and I don't see enough videos on YouTube about that. I don't see teachers talking about their jobs in like the highs and the lows. Maybe because I don't think a lot of teachers are actually on YouTube. So, you know, maybe this could be a video that's gonna be relatable for a lot of people who don't find content online that talks to them or speaks to them in that way. So hopefully this can be useful for someone out there. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you're doing amazingly well. You can follow me on Twitter if you want, but I'm not really active on there. But you can follow me on Instagram, and I am really active on there. And I'm also on Patreon if you want to support me financially, if that's something you're fine with. I don't know. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye!